welcome everybody to the next episode of Chiefs Focus First and 10 Live. You are here with JP, and we got a special guest on. We got Tim Grunhard, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you doing, my friend?
JP, I'm doing great. It's great to see you again. Excited to be on with you guys. I know you guys do such a great job with your podcast, and you guys have a lot of great followers, a lot of people that tune in, and thank you for having me, and excited to talk a little bit about the Chiefs and the new book.
Yeah, man. You know what? I appreciate you sending me the book, and I appreciate all the accolades there. We were really excited to get your book. I was very excited to get it. Strangely enough, I've had zero time lately, and I've read through parts of it, and the beginning of it, and I knew a lot of your story anyway, given the fact. But I wanted to see what you had to say and how you. What even? I mean, it's kind of crazy. What even brought you to write a book? I mean, it's kind of, I didn't expect it. So,
yeah, JP, not a lot of people did. I joke all the time. I said I wrote a book before I read one. So, you know what? We were kind of sitting around, and it was, COVID kind of kicked in, and we were all kind of just hunkered down. And my wife said to me, she goes, you got a lot of good stories. You do a lot of good radio stuff. She said, you ought to put it down on paper. And, I kind of thought about it. I said, it just sounds like a lot of work. And, a couple of weeks later, a buddy of mine, just out of the blue, David Smale, who has written a lot of books, said, hey, are you interested in writing a book? I said, it's funny you said that, because yes, I am. I have a lot of good things I'd like to talk about. And so to make a long story short, we put together an outline, and then I put together pages and pages of yellow notebook paper with stories and anecdotes and everything else. And we kind of worked together and put this thing on paper for about 4 or 5 months last winter and into the spring, and was able to secure a publisher and Triumph out of Chicago. And it was great. It really was good for me, because it reminded me of not only of how blessed and how lucky I am to have been with the Chiefs organization, but also reminded me that there's so many special people that have been in my life, not only with the Kansas City Chiefs, but, Kansas City Chief fans and just people I've run across throughout my life. So it was a great, great time and a great experiment for us, for lack of a better word, to put some things on paper, and I think people have enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. I was really surprised when I said, because I remember everything that you did on the football field. And I have to say, I mean, honestly, standing on the sideline, you scared me. I don't think people realize how intimidating you were on the field. And it translated to other players. And that's the one thing that I would remember, is that as an offensive lineman, usually, you got intimidation, but then there's you. There was only a few guys that could do that. You were one of them. Willie was one of them. I mean, it was just guys that just scared the hell out of opposing defenses. I mean, and plus, you're like 4th all time in Chiefs, with, would you play 169 games, something like that. That's kind of amazing in its own right, because usually, as you know, you feel it every day. Offensive linemen get beat up. It's a tough, gritty, hard job, and you were able to withstand it for a very long period of time. And looking at you now, it's a little frustrating, because you're 2 years older than I am, and you look way better than I do, condition-wise. But you've done. The book is great. I hope everybody goes out and gets a copy of this, because it's pretty insightful. If you weren't around and you really didn't get to see the inside scoop of anything and what these guys not only went through, but how they got there, and everything that just transpired during that time frame, it's pretty interesting to find out, or to read about. Now, I noticed you had Carl Peterson involved in this project. How did that come together?
Yeah, so Carl obviously drafted me in 1990. I talk a little bit about the draft process. I played guard in college, never played center. And so went to the combine, and Howard Mudd, who was my offensive line coach, rest in peace, great man, who passed away a couple of years ago from a motorcycle accident. But so I wasn't quite sure what I was. I didn't know if I was a guard or a center or what it was. So went to the combine and had a pretty decent combine, but met with Carl Peterson, met with Marty Schottenheimer, sat and communicated and talked to him, got up on the board and did some stuff. And they seemed to like what I had to say, and they seemed to like that I understood some of the concepts that the Chiefs were running at the time, but I never really heard from them. So, a couple of weeks before the draft, I get a call from the 49ers, and they asked me to fly out. And I go out to San Francisco, and I talk about this in the book. And here, a guy that I was really about maybe a fourth rounder, fifth rounder, kind of in that area. And Bob McKittrick, who was the offensive line coach for the 49ers, and Seifert was the head coach, and we sat down with them, and he said, "Hey, listen, we're going to draft you in the first round." And I looked at him. I thought, "Are these guys crazy? Do they know who they're talking to?" I mean, and they're like, "Yeah, we want you to play center. Jesse Sapolo is getting a little bit older, and we want you to come in here, learn from Jesse for a couple of years, and then take over and play a center for us." And I'm like, "That's great." So I go back to South Bend. I go back to Notre Dame, and I tell everybody, "Listen, I'm going to be a 49er." Well, fast forward to draft day. And they call me and say, "Hey, we just want to make sure this is the phone and the connection's right. And we're going to be calling you last pick in the first round." And I'm all excited. And then the first round came around. The 49ers they picked Dexter Carter, receiver out of Florida State. And I'm like, "Oh, well, damn." So I get a call right away, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know Dexter Carter was going to be there, but hey, listen, we're going to take you in the second round. It's a done deal. It just kind of fell to us, and our we fought for you, but they wanted to get Dexter, get some speed." And I'm like, "Listen, guys, I was going to be fourth or fifth round anyway. Second round is just fine. I'm not too worried about it. Just want to be on a team." Yeah. So about an hour and a half later, I get a phone call, and it's Carl Peterson. He said, "Tim Grunhard, Carl Peterson." I said, "Hello?" He's like, "We just selected you at the 40th pick in the 1990 draft, and you'll be coming to Kansas City. We'll have a plane ready to pick you up there and the next day, and we're going to bring you in for a red coater deal." And I was like, "Hold on. So this is the Kansas City Chiefs, right?" He's like, "Yes, it is." And I got on with Marty, and I got on with Howard, and Howard said, "I wasn't going to let you go. You were my guy, blah, blah." So, so all of a sudden I was a Kansas City Chief. And seriously, I hung the phone up, and I turned to my girlfriend, now my wife, Sarah, and I said, "Where the hell is Kansas City at?" I said, "Is it in Kansas or Missouri?" And JP, I'm still not sure. And I've been here for years. So
there's a white line. So, I mean, the white line, you cross it and you're in one side or the other side.
That's right. So I got here to Kansas City, and everything's been great. But real quick story there. So I didn't know I was going to play guard or center. And I'm sitting in my locker, and Howard Mudd comes up spinning the football and throws it to me and said, "Hey, you're playing center." And I said, "I never played center before." He goes, "Well, you're gonna today." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I want you to go and do a couple snaps with Steve DeBerg." You remember Bergie? Yeah. And Bergie was, he's an older guy. And literally, I wasn't sure what he looked like because I wasn't a Chiefs fan. I didn't know anything about Steve DeBerg. So I went to Jonathan Hayes, who was sitting next to me. I knew Jonathan because of Jay. Jay Hayes was a coach of mine at Notre Dame. Yeah. So Jonathan was like the one guy that I knew. So I said, "Jonathan," I said, "which one is Steve DeBerg?" He goes, "You rookies. He's the guy laying down over there on the other side." I said, "That old guy laying on the ground, that's the quarterback?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah." So I took the ball over I was like, "Do I call him Steve? Do I call him Bergie? Do I call him Mr. Berg?" So I went to Mr. DeBerg. I said, "Mr. DeBerg, Howard wants me to take a couple snaps with you." And I put this in the book, and he gets up, and you hear all the bones cracking, and he's all just sore, and gets up, and he goes, "All right." And I did literally one snap. He goes, "Oh, you're fine. I'll see you." And I walked back to my locker, and I said, "This is going to be a crap show here. I never played center. I'm going against Bill Moss and Dan Saliamo in minicamp, and I've got to snap the ball to Steve DeBerg, who took one snap from me in practice." So, that's the story of my draft and coming to Kansas City. So to answer your question, I called Carl, and I said, "Hey, Carl, I'm writing a book. I appreciate you drafting me. You know me as good as anybody. Would you like to forward this?" And he was nice enough. But knowing Carl, like you do, JP, he wanted to read the book first because he wanted to make sure that I wasn't saying anything about anybody that he disagreed with.
Including him. Does
Yeah.
that matter?
And I told a couple of stories about him too. There was one that he's like, I don't remember when I came out with two different shoes when I yelled
He
at
did.
you guys.
Yeah.
And he did. And that was after Derek's. You guys, you know
Yeah.
Derek very well. The Monday night meltdown on the Denver game, and that's the first time that Lamar Hunt ever yelled at anybody.
Yeah.
Came into that locker room, and then at practice, Carl came out, and Carl was so mad. His hair is all disheveled. If you know Carl, he always looked like the nines, and he had two different shoes on. So Zotter and I looked at each other and laughed, and we probably should have gotten in trouble for laughing at Carl while he was yelling at us, but he had two different shoes on. So that was the only thing he said. I don't quite remember having two different shoes on. I said, yeah, you did, Carl.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Carl had his own way of doing things. It's funny you say that because JJ had a similar story. When he was brought in to Kansas City, Marty told him, I'll be giving you a call, after his workout. And he hadn't heard from him for about 3 weeks. And JJ went to the facility and he said, look, I'm broke. He said, I got no money. I've got, bills I got to pay. I got to buy diapers. I've got things I've got to do. And Marty said, I really apologize. I'm sorry I haven't called you. But he stood up and he took $250 out of his pocket. That was on a Friday. And he said, here, will this get you through the weekend? I'll call you on Monday. And JJ reluctantly took it, but he did because he needed the money. And I mean, Marty called him on Monday. I loved Marty. I did. He was just a great guy all the way around. And I always tell people when I was at practice or watching everybody play, it was like when you heard him talking, you just kind of gravitated. You could gravitate. It was like you just floated across the field to listen to what he had to say. He just was a philosophical guy that had everything in the world to say. And when he said it, it meant something. Sometimes you didn't understand it, but it meant something.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, Marty was an English teacher by trade. That's what he wanted to be.
Yeah.
So he had a master usage of the English language. He was really good, really smart, very articulate.
Yes.
And I have a pretty similar story. In about third or fourth game of my career, my father had cancer, probably started maybe junior year or senior year at Notre Dame, and he was heading downhill. And I got a call from my mom one time. He was down in Mountain Home, Arkansas, where they were retired down to, and she said, "You better, come on down. I don't think your dad's going to make it." And this was on a Monday night around 4 or 5. We just got off the field and got out of practice, and I zipped back over to Arrowhead, and I said, "Marty," I said, my dad's not doing very well. My mom really wants me to get down to Mountain Home. He said, "Hold on, let me see if I could find a private jet to get you down there."
Yeah.
And it was 5 or 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock at night on a Monday. He had a hard time. He just couldn't pull it off. He said, "Listen, here's what I want you to do." He said, "I want you to give me a call when you get to Springfield, Missouri." And this is before car phones and cell phones. So I had to get out in Springfield. I'll never forget. I was right by the Bass Pro Shops over there off of Sunshine or Sunset Drive, whatever it was. And I got off and I used a payphone. I called him collect. And it was a collect call from Tim Grunhard to Marty Schottenheimer. And he answered and he said, "Okay, thanks for calling me. When you get to your house, call me again." And he was just so concerned. And when I got to my house in Arkansas, he will talk to my mom, talk to my brother, talk to, me, obviously. But he was one of those guys that just, you always felt. And at that point, I said, you know what? I'd do anything for this guy.
Yeah.
And I tried to, the rest of my career, is lead his team and give him an opportunity to win with intensity, enthusiasm, and trying to be the leader on the field. And it really all stems back from him, really caring when I was at my lowest point.
And that's and it's funny because you were a leader and Marty, he just, I don't know, he had so much admiration and respect for everybody. And I think that, in turn gained him all the respect and admiration from everybody. When I met him, I didn't know, because I'd heard stories about him and things, and I always heard he was a great guy, but he was very intense. And I didn't know how I was going to, how he was going to react to me. And I was just one of the guys, and I didn't even play for the Chiefs. I was just some guy that, knew everybody. And it was so great to have him there, and just to listen to things he had to say. He was a great guy, but it's sad that he's gone, but he taught me a lot. He really did. And I'm going to ask you something because it's something that I remember distinctly. When Christian Okoye walked onto the field for the first time, the practice field, I was sitting next to Derek and I said, "Who the hell is that?"
Hmm.
And he goes, "That's Christian." I said, "Yeah, right." And he goes, "No, it really is." I said, "That's Christian Okoye." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "That's the guy that ran what 4.57 or whatever it was." And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "That's impossible." And he goes, "You'll see." And he started sprinting and he ran across, he ran down the field. And I thought, Jesus, he is so fast for somebody at 253 pounds, just a monster. He was built like Adonis, I mean, the guy was just a unbelievable specimen of a person. And I said, I don't even know how that's possible. And he goes, nobody does. He goes, that's why he's here. But he couldn't take the snap. He had a really rough time with that. And he just hated football. I mean, he told me he hated football at the time. And he would get very frustrated. But there was a specific time that he got the snap, and Marty, I remember Marty saying this to him. He said, look, because he was getting very frustrated. And Marty said, look, he said, when you get the ball, tuck it and run over who's ever in front of you. Doesn't matter who it is. So Christian, of course, okay, coach. And he got it on about the sixth try. And JJ was out running protection, and he laid JJ out, knocked him out. He was so upset. I mean, he was actually crying. And I thought he was dead. I jumped off a bench and I ran over there, and I thought for sure he was just laying flat out like you see in a movie where his arms are spread out one way, his legs are another, his eyes are wide open. And I thought, Jesus Christ, he's dead. And then they gave him smelling salts, and he woke up, and he says, what the hell happened? And Christian said, man, I'm so sorry. Coach just told me to run over who was ever in front of me. I didn't mean to do it. And he said, I understand. And JJ was so nice, he said, I understand, but we're on the same team. He said he meant, after, when we're playing against someone else. And of course, needless to say, Jay didn't practice the rest of the game. And Christian really didn't either. He was so damn distraught that he didn't want to practice that day. And I talked to JJ a little while afterwards, and I said, are you okay? And he goes, I'm still wrung. And I said, really? And he goes, good God, he hits hard. And I said, you're little and you took a massive hit. He goes, yeah. I don't know how I even lived through that. Well, fast forward, through JJ's career, and we had talked, we talk all the time. And he says, he was on our show, and he says, in the 9 years that I played in the NFL, the hardest hit I ever took was from Christian Okoye in practice. And to this day, he says that. And I'm like, I don't know if you remember that day. I'll never forget it. And Christian was so angry at himself, and he kept saying, I hate this damn game, because he wasn't a violent guy. He wasn't one of those guys that wanted to purposely hurt someone, I guess I should say. But I just told him, I said, Christian, you know what? You're going to be great. I said, you just got to just focus and maintain, and don't worry about that. Move forward from that. And Marty was listening to me, and we only had like a 10-minute conversation about it. And I said, you may hate the game now, but you're going to love it later. And Marty walked up to me and he goes, where'd you get that from? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, that little speech you gave Christian. I said, I got it from you. And he goes, what? And I said, I got it from you. And he said, what do you mean you got it from me? I said, I listen to everything you say. As much as you don't think, I know I don't play for this team, but I listen to everything you say. And you motivate people to a point where I would want to run through a brick wall for you. Yeah. And I felt bad for the guy. And he goes, wow. And after that, Marty was so nice to me. I mean, he was just one of the nicest guys to me ever. And I'll never forget it. It was a great thing. But anyway, you had a hell of a career. I remember things that a lot of people won't, because I'm old, but you played a long time. Would you have 10 years, 169 games? I think you had 8 fumbles. You really made an impact on the team as a whole. And a lot of people can't say that they did that. As you know, I know offense and defense didn't get along that well on the same team back in that day. I mean, there was fights, there was helmets thrown, there was all kinds of things going on. And I asked Derek one time, I said, why the hell do you guys hate each other so much? He goes, we're a different team on the field than we are, in practice than we are in a game. And I said, oh, well, I'll go along with that story. And I left it at that. I never understood it. I played baseball, so it was a different realm for me. And anyway, you did have a huge impact on a lot of players. I mean, a lot of guys still to this day talk about the impact that you had on them as a player. And you, I guess you motivated a lot of people to play harder, play stronger. You were an intense individual. I don't think people realize how intense you were when you played the game. Um, it was scary. And again, I was on the sidelines, so I didn't. When you scare somebody that's on the sidelines, you make, damn, I hope I never get hit by that guy, or I hope he never gets pissed off at me. That's when you know there's something right about, they're doing something right, and you did it right. I mean, you played a long time, and I mean, you were all rookie. You were on the all rookie team. You did all of these things that, a lot back in the day, and I know you know this. Offensive linemen weren't regarded as, you know, the cream of the crop when it came to football. It was like, okay, well, he's a lineman. And I remember somebody quoting one time, well, left guard, when, just talking about offensive linemen, left guards really don't matter. And I thought, what do you mean they don't matter? I mean, where do these people come up with this stuff? But you playing center and coming from the position that you came from, you translated very quickly, which a lot of guys don't do. I mean, we see it now as much as ever, especially with like Orlando Brown switching from right to left. It's been a transition for him.
Sure.
How are you able to do it so quickly and able? I mean, I watched you take on two guys, and they never got near the quarterback for the most part.
Well,
I don't know how you did that.
One of the things that we always try to do, first of all, the great thing about playing the offensive line position, and you're exactly right. I mean, you're kind of overlooked. It doesn't matter whether it was 30 years ago, even today. I mean, some of these guys are starting to get paid a little bit better, but so is everybody else. Yeah. We always talk about the offensive line like being a hand, right? You have the five guys on the offensive line. But in order for you to have success, in order for you to be strong, in order for you to get your job done, you got to make a fist. All five guys got to work as one. And you got to have somebody in the middle, or you got to have somebody who's going to be the leader and the communicator. And you got to be somebody who's, going to try to get people in the best position. The biggest compliment I would get from guys that I played with, he said, hey, listen, you make us better because you're always communicating and you know what's going on. You're like a coach on the field. So that was something I really took a lot of pride in. There's three things that I learned from Mike Webster. Mike Webster was my mentor. Number one is finish every play and run to the line of scrimmage. I mean, that was all part of it. Hey, show effort, run to the line of scrimmage, and, finish plays to the whistle. Be the one that goes down there and the first one to celebrate with somebody scores a touchdown. Be the guy that runs up and helps the running back up. Be there for the wide receiver in case somebody's trying to peel or take a cheap shot on you. You're going to be there. Number two was be the smartest guy on the field. At the center position, it's like being a traffic cop. You got to get guys in the right position, and you got to get guys to understand where they're going to go and how they're going to get there. And if they don't do that, if they don't do it correctly, that's on you as the center. And, all five guys got to work as one, and you got to be on the same page. And in order for that to happen, you got to communicate. And then the last thing, like you've said many, many times, is you got to just have a lot of love for the game. And that's what he said. You know what? We are so blessed and so lucky to play this game called football. And he said, when we're out there, it ends for everybody. His famous line would be, it ends for everybody, some sooner than others.
Yep.
It ends for everybody. So finish every play to the whistle, be the smartest guy in the field, and enjoy every snap. And if you live in that world, which I tried to do for the 11 years that I played, if you live in that world, if you do those little things, then people will follow you. Yeah, I was a boisterous guy. Yeah, I had a big personality. Yeah, I would always be talking and always be communicating, always doing things. But I also tried to lead by example and tried to lead by being the guy that was the last one to lead the weight room, or the last one to lead the film room, or the last one to lead the field and work on different things, and be the first one there at practice and do all those little things that you do. The younger guys will look up to you. I'll never forget Brian Waters, who was just a young offensive lineman coming into Kansas City. And he said to me, hey, can you give me one piece of advice, just one thing that I could take from you to give myself the best opportunity to have success? And I said, you got to know more than the guy next to you. You got to know what you're doing. You try to know more than the coach. Try to know more than everybody else, because if you know more, believe me, they're going to put you on the field if you are ready and prepared because those are the guys they want out there, because they don't want mental errors. They don't want misassignments. They don't want bad mistakes. So be the smartest guy in the field. Yeah, you can be big. You can be physical. You can be fast. You can be tough, all those things. But if you know what the hell you're doing, you're no use to anybody. So be the smartest guy in the field.
Well, you had an impact on him because he was great. I mean, he was a great player through his
Yeah.
career. So you definitely gave him the right advice. That's for sure. You know, when you say that, I tell people all the time, especially a lot of fans that don't understand football IQ. And there's a lot of different styles of IQ. There's a lot of different things you can be extremely intelligent in. But with football IQ, it's different. You have to be able to, I guess, motivate everyone else to play, make other players better, which you were able to do. There's very few guys that care enough, I guess I should say, to make others better. You know, it's always that, there's always a guy waiting, to take your spot. And you've always heard that phrase, Marty even said it's a day-to-day game. It's a week-to-week game. 1 week you may be here, 1 week you may not. So enjoy it. And guys don't understand that it's the football IQ part of this is so detrimental to the game, or instrumental to the game.
Instrumental, sure.
Because it's, you look at guys like I always talk about Derek, because Derek, you know him, you know how he was. He didn't like to work out a lot. Everybody, a lot of people assumed he was lazy. It wasn't the fact that he was lazy. It was just that in fact, his words to me were, I tried that, because I asked him one day at his house, I said, why don't you work out a lot? And he said, what, do you think I need to? And I said, no, I'm not saying that. I said, but wouldn't you think it would make you, a little better? You're already great. He said, well, I tried that at Alabama. I worked out 4 or 5 days a week. I did all this stuff. And he said, what I found out is on Saturday I was stiff and I wasn't able to play as well. And he said, the one thing that I could tell anyone, if it helps them, is that you don't have to be the strongest in my position. You just have to be the quickest off the ball and have the best technique. And if you can read an offense, then you're going to be successful. And that's the one thing that Derek was very good at.
Yeah.
You were the same way on the opposite end. You were able to read defenses and able to know what their plan, it seemed to me anyway, what their plan was prior to the snap even happening. That's something that's a gift, and it's a lot of hard work to be able to understand that. And you put a lot of time in to grasp that, where a lot of guys don't do that. They just think it's, let me go out there, let me run my assignment. If I hit my assignment, great. If I don't, it's not my fault. And you never had that mentality. You were intense, and you were the loudest guy on the field. There was no doubt. I mean, people heard you when you talked. I heard you when you talked.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do at Arrowhead.
So. And the crazy thing is that I was just so blessed. Like I talked about Howard Mudd being my first offensive line coach for the first 4 years. And Howard was a very, very smart coach as far as scheme and everything else, but he was more known for his technique and fundamental work. Mm-hmm. So as a young guy, you need those little things like that to do well. And then my next coach that came in was Alex Gibbs. And Alex Gibbs, I mean, listen, this guy, my offensive line coaches at Kansas City could be on the Mount Rushmore of offensive line coaches. They really could. Yeah. Howard Mudd was about as good as anybody at technique and fundamentals. Alex Gibbs was probably the best scheme coach that ever coached in the NFL in the offensive line. And he taught me how to watch film. And he taught me how to read tendencies. And he taught me how to read defenses. He taught me, hey, listen, if the safety is topped off over here and the backers have his feet this way, then, hey, go ahead and change the protection and get out there and let's put ourselves in the best position to have success. So he taught me how to read defenses. He taught me how to read schemes. He taught me how to be a better player of being like I said, the traffic cop out there. And then after that, I had Art Shell. Art Shell, I mean, yeah. Here's a guy that was a Hall of Fame player and a Hall of Fame, I contend, a Hall of Fame coach. But he was different because he was more of a player's coach. He knew how to play. He played the game. And I learned a lot from him about how to handle myself and how to go about my business, both on and off the field as a professional football player. And then Mike Solari, who was in the league for many, many years and was still in the league last year up in Seattle. And he's had a long, illustrious career. So, you're blessed when you have coaches like that. And, you try to take it. I tell everybody, Now I coach offensive line and run game coordinator in high school, and I'm having a great time with that, and doing that, and having a lot of fun working with kids. But I always tell coaches, or I tell players, everything. I say, listen, if you can take one thing from a clinic, or one thing from a practice, or one thing from a game, and you can learn from that, then you're getting better. And I think too many times people are trying to do too many things at one time instead of focusing in on maybe one or two things to get better at each week. And then you build on that, and you build on that, and the next thing you know, you've done the job that you need to do to be a better football player. And I think too many times, people are trying to listen to all this information. And believe me, everybody's got an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's going to share it. So that was important to me, is to just take one little thing from each one of those coaches and put it into my repertoire. And I would tell all the time, and I tell our kids, listen, put it in the toolbox, because when you get out there in a game, eventually you're going to have to take that tool out, and you're going to have to take that little technique, or they're going to take that knowledge out of the toolbox and go ahead and use it in the game. And that's how you become a better football player.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a technique I guess I should say an educational tool, a game that you need to have the smarts to be able to go out and learn from your mistakes. Some guys, I mean, you didn't see it so much back then as you do now, I guess, but and it could be just simply because, people are getting paid, they're younger. I don't, their mindset's different. I really don't know what it is. And in this new world, like we were talking prior to the show, with all the technology and all the things, everybody's trying to build a brand, and they want to have, guys are making money off playing video games on Twitch. I mean, never in a million years, you and I would have ever thought that we could sit down with a Nintendo when we were kids and make money off of it. But now guys are making millions of dollars, and because they're using their platform to do that, but they're spending, it seems like to me, some of these guys that aren't really getting into that realm of where they should be, because they're physically talented, they're obviously intelligent, but yet their mindset is, I want to play video games and make money off of that.
Yeah.
And that is still, and look, it's probably because I'm older and I just don't understand it. But, when I played baseball, it took me a while. I'm left-handed, of course, and a left-handed guy that, threw 96, 97 miles an hour at a very young age. And I didn't have a lot of control. I had a very good mentor that helped me with that. And he got me under control, and I learned from him every day. All the way, I mean, from a little kid all the way up, he taught me certain fundamentals and certain things that I can do, certain ways of, hold the ball, flick my wrist, just different things to have a mean curveball or crazy slider, and you don't have too many left-handed guys that threw overhand, and which was kind of an anomaly. And the fact that I had 6-7 pitches, and that was different. So but I learned from those guys that taught me, similar to, I wish, if I'd had a little bit more, I don't know how to say this, but I guess maybe brains at the time when I got injured. I got injured in a scouting event, and it was just a weird situation, but I wasn't thinking clearly when it happened, and I just wanted to impress everybody that was there, is really my whole goal behind it. And, you got to throw 80 pitches, and I got to 78, and that was kind of the end of my career. But it all goes, I look at like you, and I look at, Dan and all those guys that played back in the trench guys that played hard every day, day in and day out. And they lasted for so long in the league. A lot of that is simply because you knew what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and how to keep yourself healthy. And a lot of guys don't look at the game that way. I mean, you remember the old tight ends. They didn't care about catching the football. They cared about hitting somebody. Yeah. That was what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
You're not going to last too long in the league by, going that direction. I mean, we're seeing it now with George Kittle. I mean, the guy has been in the league for, I don't know, he's 29 years old, and he seems like he's injured every year because his goal is to go out and hit somebody as hard as he can absolutely hit them. He's really not built for that. And he definitely is not a good plan if you want to have longevity in this league. But he does it, and he still does it to this day. He still just lamb blasts people. You'd think he'd quit by now, but just hasn't happened. But regardless, you did a lot for the team, and you did a lot for everybody. Actually, it's crazy. And you're at Bishop Miege. I mean, you've been like all over the place. You were head coach there, then you went to Kansas,
Right.
then you came back to Bishop Miege. You've done sports talk. I remember that because I did some back in the day.
Yeah.
And you're doing it now a little bit still, right? Are you on 810? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm on 810. I do 3 hours a week, and then I do some pregame on Sundays.
Yeah.
I basically go on every show that is on during the day. I don't have my own show anymore. A, I don't want to put that much time into it, and B, with coaching and all the other stuff I have going on, it was just too much. So I enjoy going over, and I do the morning show with the Border Patrol, and then I do a show with Seren Petro. I'm sure you probably on Seren. And then Frank Bull and I do a show on Thursday nights called Crunch Time. So I stay pretty active, but yeah, my first love is, and people always say to me, well, yeah, you coach college. How come you didn't stay in there? I said, I gave it a shot. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. To me, I thought you could make more of a difference coaching high school kids. And, one of the things that I hear all the time is, hey, how come you haven't gone and done some like color for, college games, or decided to go in and maybe do some TV work for the NFL? And it really all comes back to Mike Webster once again. Is Mike Webster gave me an opportunity with a mentorship to make a living and be the best football player I possibly can. And I always felt so bad that I didn't understand and know where Mike was mentally. He had a lot of issues. He disappeared. He came back. He disappeared again. And, I always felt like, gosh, if I would have known, if I would have been around, if I would have paid more attention, I could have maybe helped Mike out, or, got some help or did something. And I wasn't able to do that. So I've decided, hey, to honor him and to kind of live up to the legacy that he had here with me, is that I would give kids, high school kids, an opportunity to use football as a vehicle. There's a football program out there for everybody. They're not all Power 5. You got Division II, you got Division III. And I think it's just so important to play football, because to me, football is a microcosm of life. We all have fourth down situations in life we got to convert. And you know what? You can't back down from a challenge. You can't back down from a tough situation. You learn those situations. You learn those things in football. And so if you can get a young kid and give him an opportunity to go to college, or give him an opportunity to have some discipline, or give him an opportunity to have a time management plan in his brain when he goes to college, whether he plays sports or not, I think that to me is the most important thing. So that's what I've decided to do in my life, is try to pay it back, try to pay it to some of these kids and give them an opportunity that Mike gave me. And it's been great for me. I've coached my two sons who played over at Bishop Miege, had a great time with them, won some state championships. So it's all fun and dandy. But more importantly than that, to put out a lot of kids that have been in the community and have been great members of the Kansas City community, and have gone on and done great things. And to me, that's just so important. And that's my kind of giving back to Mike for that.
Well, I think that's extremely admirable, because, when I was in high school, we had a football coach. He played for Nebraska, was injured, ended up being a high school coach. He was I played football with him. I played through high school. I didn't, and a little bit in college, but my forte was baseball. So he was just such a great mentor to have. And there's nothing better, I think, if you can start them at a younger age, and somebody like you that has been through the whole trials and tribulations of going from high school to college, getting into the NFL, playing 10 years, that gives somebody motivation to not only, whether it be football or sports or whatever the case it is, it builds that discipline that they're going to need in life. And it gives them hope that regardless of what they do, if they fail, they can, if you fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you're going to get back up. And that's something I think is awesome that you're doing, because a lot of guys don't do that. I know Christian did that for a while as well. And I don't know if he still is or not, but he was teaching high school football for a while. And I just think it's just great that you guys are doing. I mean, anybody can go to college and do it, that, but when you're doing it from a younger age, and you're really giving these guys what they need to know when they do get to college, that's something that a lot of kids don't have. A lot of kids don't
Yeah.
get.
And
So
you know what?
that's awesome.
And you know what, JP? It's so, and I know you've been around this in whether you're in Nevada or Kansas City or wherever. There's just so many parents out there that are just so focused in on themselves,
Yeah, oh God.
and
Yeah.
that yeah, I mean they care about their kids, but a lot of times they're just not giving them the kind of attention and the kind of discipline and the kind of focus that they need to have in order to be successful. And it's such a shame. And maybe, just maybe, you have an effect on a kid and give him a little bit of discipline. And you know what? Give him a little bit of love when he does something good. Kick him in the ass when he does something bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
But make sure that he understands that, hey, listen, I'm criticizing the performance. I love the performer.
Yeah.
I'm criticizing the performance. If you don't do something right, then you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
But if you do something right, but understand either way that, I'm giving you attention because I love you, I care for you, I want you to be the best possible person you could be. And I think too many times in this age, not all of them, but parents, a lot of times, I mean, they're just too busy for their kids. They got so many other things going on. They're so worried about themselves that they forget about that these kids need that kind of attention. And, my father was a Chicago policeman, a violent crime detective.
Yeah.
He worked midnights. And gosh, he worked from 11 o'clock at night till about 8 o'clock in the morning. He would come home. He'd sleep during the day. We were at school. But, he coached all our baseball teams, our basketball teams. He went out and helped out with different things, with the football team. So he was out there, between 3 o'clock and, through dinner. And then we'd have dinner together every night. That was one of the things. We sat down as a family and had dinner. That was important to him. And then he went to bed and took a couple more hours, a little nap, and he went to work. That was his day.
Yeah.
But the only time that he had available, he gave to his kids. And I think too, and that was important to us. And we knew that as kids. My brother played professional baseball. He went up all the way to AAA, played for the California Angels and Oakland A's. Yeah. So, he had a good effect on my brother and had a good effect on me. And if you let kids know that you care for them, that you love them, and you really want them to have success, and it's just amazing what they can do. So, I think it's just so important nowadays. If you have a little bit of time to, give back to kids and give them an opportunity to use sports as a vehicle to maybe change their lives. And it's just so important.
It is. It's, and I ask people all the time because, I'm fairly blunt, and I'll say what is on my mind. And there's times that I've asked people, why did you ever have kids? And they look at me like, what do you mean? Well, you work, you come home, you ignore them, you yell at them. They can't do anything right. They can't do anything wrong. No matter what they do is wrong. What the hell is the purpose of having kids? Did you do it for a tax write-off, or did you do it because you actually wanted kids? And people get pissed at me because I say things like that. But look, I went through that little phase of, needing, I guess a mindset of, I got to make as much money as I can make. I've got to, I've got to push myself to a point where I don't know my kids, and I've got 3. My youngest is turning 13 this week. And I've been lucky enough that I learned from that mistake. And I'm spending more time with my kids, with my daughters. I could, my other ones are grown and gone, but they actually live in Kansas City. But it's just, it's something that you have to really put the effort in if you want your kids to succeed. And if you don't, your kids, unless they have somebody like you that's going to go out and help them, which as much as this may not sound great, it may not, there's no replacement for a parent. Sure. And if you're going to put the effort in like you do to help these kids succeed when their parents, of course, if you look at it over the years, it's just gotten worse, but probably 60-70% of the parents out there don't really put a lot of effort into what their kids are doing in life.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Part of it too, JP, is that, listen, they all want to be friends with their kids. I don't want my kids to be my friends. I have 4 kids. I love my kids to death. They're my heart. They're my soul. They're what I'm about. But I've told them many times, I said, listen, I'm not your friend. You got plenty of friends. I'm not your friend. I don't want to be your friend. I'm your father.
Exactly.
We'll have that relationship. Now I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to care for you. I'm going to do whatever. And I love you. But we have that fine line of respect where they've got to understand that there's the difference between right and wrong, and you're going to be held accountable to that. And and I know we're probably going on a tangent. Everybody here is like,
probably, yeah.
But the reality of the situation is that it really has a lot to do with the structure. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs today, Andy Reid as the head of this team, Andy Reid does such a great job, I think, of teaching these guys that they have to be prepared. I call it the mental, physical aspect of football. They're tested mentally and they're tested physically. And one of the things that Andy Reid does really well, and he still does it during the football season, he's one of the only coaches that does this, that he challenges these guys physically. And then after he gets them a little tired, a little bit worn out, then he throws the mental part at them and he sees how they react. And those are the guys that play. Those are the guys that you see on the field playing on Sundays, are the guys that can handle that when you're tired and you're worn out. Because listen, not only is it a long game, but it's a hell of a long season.
Yes.
And you're going to hit, if you're a rookie, you're going to hit a rookie wall. That's part of it. If you're a veteran guy, you're going to get tired. You're going to get beat up. You're going to get sore. You're never at 100%. But you're like Lou Holtz used to say all the time, man, your mind controls your body. What your mind tells you, your body will do. And he does a really good job, Andy, of making sure these guys are mentally prepared for a football game. And I think that's a lot with parenting and a lot with coaching. You got the mental aspect of challenging somebody and letting them know that you care about them, letting them know that you're there for them, is so much more important than how big and how fast and how strong they are.
Yeah. It's funny, but that was actually my next segue is what, looking at the time that you played and looking at it now, what do you think the changes have been? What do you see as far as how things have evolved in the game? And looking at the Kansas City Chiefs now, I mean, you mentioned it in your book a lot, it's basically the evolution of Kansas City.
Yeah.
What is, you look at like a Patrick Mahomes and an Andy Reid, even an Alex Smith for that matter, they changed the culture of the city. I think Marty changed the culture in the day. We had, I mean, you know how, you probably don't, if you weren't a Kansas City fan prior to 1990 and didn't pay much attention to how bad they actually were, not just from a coaching standpoint, but from a GM standpoint, a player standpoint, a scouting standpoint, they were just rough. And now you look at it from, I remember when they brought everybody in the 90 class, the 91 class, every class after that. And I kept thinking all Marty is doing is just building and building and building and getting better. The only thing that I noticed is that sometimes Carl would bring in guys that were really kind of close to the end of their career. Like I'm not diminishing anything that Joe Montana ever did, but he was really close to the end of his career. And he did his best for us in 93. Mm-hmm. And I cried like a baby when we lost that game in Buffalo. I was actually there. And it was a rough day. But looking at how Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and even Brett Veach for that matter, they have changed this culture and changed the way not only a GM looks at a player, because Veach is no lazy individual. I tell these people all the time, he's not the guy sitting back in an office waiting for a scouting group to bring in players. He goes out and finds his players because that's what his job was. And I look at Andy and I think, God, I mean, this guy has been around for so long, been through so much, but yet he has changed. He evolves with the times. And a lot of coaches don't do that, especially when they get up there in age. They don't evolve with the times. What do you see when you look at this team now versus, the past 20 years? Just put it that way.
Well, first of all, you got to start with Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I think, is one of the best coaches at making adjustments during the game that I've ever seen. I mean, some of the things that he does and some of the things that he's able to do during the game is special. Anybody can have a game plan, but once that game plan goes awry, if they make adjustments to that, it's like a chess game. Can you make that next move and give yourself an opportunity? So he's really good at that. The other thing is, listen, the NFL has become a quarterback-driven league. It's always been important to have a great quarterback. And, we've had some good quarterbacks, never had that great quarterback. Joe Montana, obviously, was one of the best quarterbacks ever, but you're exactly right. He was older and he was towards the end of his career. Rich Gannon was good, and, Gerback had a little bit of time, and, you can go through the list. But it's a quarterback-driven league. A guy like Patrick Mahomes is special. And when you have guys like that not only can create and make plays when things aren't there, but also be able to demand excellence from everybody around them, from the offense to the defensive side. Your point exactly is right. Even to this day, offenses and defenses are two different camps. I'm not going to call it I'm not talking politics here, but I'm not going to say it's like Democrats and Republicans, but it's pretty damn close. They may be right.
You're right.
But, there's times when, we'd have a meeting and all the defensive guys would stand up and clap because they were happy about what was being said. And then they say something else, the offensive guys would stand up and clap because they were happy. Just like in Congress, when you watch it, everybody stands up when it's a partisan deal. Well, defenses and offenses are very similar. But when you have a leader, and that's what we've struggled with in our country now, is having a leader that can connect and bring everybody together. And Patrick Mahomes is that kind of guy. He can bring everybody together, and he's the leader of that team, and everybody respects him. And that is just so important to point out that when you have a guy that's not only your best player, but also the leader, and everybody respects him, then you got something going on. So Andy Reid, great coach, unbelievable adjustments, but Patrick Mahomes is a special, special guy.
I honestly, God, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone that can do the things he does. He's 5 steps ahead of everybody. And when I say that to people, they don't really understand what I'm saying, but he has 5 plays in his mind that he will work out prior to the snap. And he's a very elusive guy, which is pretty amazing to me, that his eye movements, his hand gestures, the way when he's rolling out of the pocket, I watch all 22 and I look at the things he does to throw off a defensive player or 2 or 3 or 5. And they don't know where he's going to go from 1 second to the next. They don't know if he's going to throw the ball, if he's going to run the ball, if it's just a little flea flicker. They have no clue what the hell he's going to do. Not to mention the fact that he's crazy accurate in every aspect of and every position that he's in. I mean, the guy's horizontal, vertical, it doesn't matter. He's just unbelievably talented. I know a lot of that comes from his dad. I played against his dad in the minors, and Jesus, he was good. He was a great pitcher, but he just has a great family too, a great family upbringing, but he's just so damn intense, and he's very intelligent. It's very hard to articulate how extremely intelligent he is. To have somebody on the field, you could talk about all the other quarterbacks in the league. And look, if he played for the Raiders, as much as I don't like the Raiders, I would say the same thing. Because he's just such a talented quarterback. It's like you can give him the reins and say, here, go and do what you've got to do to win this football game. And he will figure out a way of doing it. He's just that good. I've never seen anybody play and throw a football the way he throws a football. I mean, anybody can throw a slider with a football. There's something wrong. I don't know how you can do that. His ball curves. Yeah. I mean, the guy can throw a curve ball with a football. You've been around the game a lot longer. Around a lot more people. Have you ever seen anybody throw a football like him?
No. The crazy thing is, too, and to your point, talking about, he's 4 or 5 steps ahead of everybody else. I want everybody to watch here on Chiefs Focus podcast when you're watching this. Next game that the Kansas City Chiefs play, I want you to watch Patrick Mahomes between plays. His mind is racing. He's already thinking 2 or 3, and he does this all the time. He wants those plays in quickly so that he can get things going. So I want you to watch his hand. He's always trying to, let's get this play. Let's get it going. Let's get it going. Let's get it going. Yeah. And that is just so unique that his mind is already 2 or 3 or 4 steps ahead of what's going on. He understands what he's looking for. He understands how he wants to do it. and he's just waiting for that play to come in so that he can put all those scenarios and put that puzzle together and give his team an opportunity to win. Yeah, he's a special cat, and really, there's a lot of good football players on this team. And listen, in the book, View from the Center, Tim Grunhard, if you want to buy the book, it's at timgrunhard.com. If you buy it there, I'll give you an autographed copy. Once again, timgrunhard.com. Yes. I talk about the quarterbacks that I was around. And I was around guys like Rich Gannon. And Rich Gannon in the huddle, he demanded to be the guy, the leader of that huddle. And if you were talking, so you got to have a quarterback to say, hey, listen, shut up. I'm the guy in the huddle. And, there'd be times when we'd be bitching and moaning, hey, we should be running the ball more. And he's like, listen, do you guys want to call these plays? Do you want to hand the ball off? Do you guys want to take those hits? Go ahead, do it. If you don't want to do that, then shut up and keep me safe and give me an opportunity. And it was great. And that's just the way it was. So, quarterbacks are a special breed, and we got a really good one in Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, we really do. And you in your book, you talk about all the quarterbacks that you've been around, and also Andy Reid and going back to 1990 and forward, but you really put an emphasis on how intelligent he is and what a special breed he is. He's a generational talent. I don't know if anybody will ever deny that. I mean, people, of course, are going to be upset that he's as good as he is if you're a different fan base. We've heard everything, Tim. Honest to God, how many times have you read, whether it be on Twitter or in an article, well, it's because he has all these weapons. It's because of this. It's because of that. The refs love him so much. It's one thing after another. We get the least calls when it comes to penalties that are, opposed against us than probably pretty much anybody in the team or in the league. But we're now it's the Tom Brady era where now Mahomes is getting the love that Tom Brady always got. That's absolutely not true. Chris Jones gets called for everything he does, but yet you can yank his jersey straight in the air and everybody in God's green earth can see it and nobody will call that hold. So it's not a matter of having Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, because that was the biggest thing we heard was, oh, well, if we had Travis Kelce, if we had Tyreek Hill, well, now you got Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we've watched him play without both of those guys in the game and put up 36 points with guys that, quote unquote, weren't the best wide receivers in the league. He made them better. And going to your point, I've said this on the show so many times, he makes everyone better around him. It's very rare that you see a quarterback that makes a defensive player want to play better and actually be better, but he does that. And that's something it's rare. It's rare, and he does demand respect, and he gains it not by being a jackass. He does it on the field. He does it with the way he presents himself and the way he plays the game.
Absolutely.
That's something that you did. There was guys in the 90s, for everybody out there that's listening, there was guys in the 90s that, like Tim, that they gained the respect because of who they were, how they played the game, the intelligence that they put into the game, and how much the work ethic that they put into it. Then you had guys in the 90s that wanted to demand the respect because they had one or two good plays. Then they thought they were up here when they really weren't up there. They were in the right place. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
When you know to be in the right place, like Tim was, like a lot of guys were back in that day, then that's when you gain the respect. And you earned it. You earned that respect. It's not that you demand it, you earned it. And not too many people understand that. It's just the game has evolved. Like you said, I mean, it's a totally different game than what we were used to. I mean, you played through Marty ball. I mean, if you didn't run on fourth down, that was kind of an anomaly, but excuse me. But Marty just loved to run the ball. That was just something that he loved. He believed in it, and it worked for him to a degree. It didn't get a ring, but it came close.
Yep.
And nowadays, everybody wants to see the air attack. Everybody wants to see, 70-yard bombs. They love the 18-19 Mahomes. People are complaining a little bit about the 22 Mahomes, because, he's not as I put it, Brett Favre-ish. He's not launching balls just to get intercepted. He's methodically moving down the field.
Right.
And that's what, you have to do to win in this game, in this league. It's not all about dropping the 70-yard bomb. Now, if you get the chance, great, do it. But you also have to remember that there's a progression behind it, and he's done a good job of that. And that's what I wanted your input on, as far as how it's changed so much, and watching Patrick Mahomes, that God, how lucky we are to get somebody that the first time we had drafted a quarterback since Todd Blackledge, which we all know how that turned out. And then we get somebody like him.
Right.
You know, you're probably at more games than, and meet a lot more people than most. What and your impression of him? What do you think of him as far? I mean, everything. He's just a great guy all the way around. He's a very humble individual. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to know him off the field. He's not he's a very unassuming guy. He's not the one that's trying to, be the center of attention. It's funny because, that friendship that he has with Travis Kelce, that's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Those two are inseparable. And the personality is Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes is kind of the sidekick guy when it's out in the social situations. He just doesn't crave that kind of attention. He doesn't crave, to be the life of the party. He's just a guy that's out there and he's doing his business, and he's very nice. When you go and talk to him, he's very cordial, looks you in the eyes. He cares about what you have to say. But he's not a really bombastic, big talker and over the top guy. He's just one of those guys that, he's just one of us. If you were over at a restaurant or a bar or something and he was sitting over there and you went over and said hello, he'd say hello and talk to you. But he's not going to try to draw attention to himself. That's just not the way he rolls. Yeah. He's a really cool guy. And I'll leave you with this, JP. Kansas City is a special place to play. And you know that because you live here. You've been around. They love their football. They love their Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be there for you. But you really and truly have to let them know that you care about what you're doing too. Not only on the field, but off the field.
Yes.
You got to be a part of the community, which Patrick is. You have to assimilate into the community, which Patrick has. He lives here. He's here all year round. Now, he goes out and he goes back to Texas and he goes around, but he has a home here. He built another home here, and he's probably going to end up being around here. And, that's what Kansas City loves. They want the Kansas City Chief players not only to come in here, they don't want to rent a player. They don't want a Jesse James that comes into town, steals the money, and leaves. Exactly. They want somebody who wants to be invested in the community. And that's what I learned here when I've been here. That's why I've stayed. I was drafted here in 1990 to a place I had no idea where I was going. I didn't know anybody here. And then, 30 some years later, I have built a great life here in Kansas City. My kids were all raised here in Kansas City. I wrote a book for the Kansas City Chief fans, which they have enjoyed it and they bought into it. And it's a great place to play, JP. So, that's it's a special place. And you probably know, too, from your podcast, they eat up anything they can get, any kind of information, anything about their Kansas City Chiefs because they love them.
Definitely. And I want to point out to everybody that's listening, Tim wrote and I know you guys know now, we've mentioned it a couple of times. He wrote a book. It's a great book. In fact, I have it right here, one of them. I have 2 copies of this. View from Under the Center. You guys need to go out and get this book. Like Tim said, it is on his website. Is it timgrunhard.com, right?
Yeah, timgrunhard.com.
Yeah, and it's actually on Amazon. But you're going to get a better deal, I think, if you go to Tim's website and buy it directly. Like he said, he'll give you a little break on it and an autograph on it. It's something that I think everybody needs to read. If you really want to know from somebody that's not going to hold back, this is the guy you want to know it from. I mean, he's never held back. I mean, I knew him back in the 90s, and he didn't hold back then. I don't think he's going to hold back now. So it just is what it is. I've been I've gotten through part of it, and I've been so busy with all of this stuff that we're doing with Chiefs Focus and getting it off the ground that I read it at night when I'm not exhausted, and it's very intriguing. It's crazy because some of the stuff that you mentioned in here I already knew, and then some of it I had no idea of. and I was really close to the team. So it's crazy to learn the things that you have put into this. And I like I said, I was blown away that you wrote a book, and I didn't expect it. Not that I didn't think you couldn't. It was just I didn't expect you to write a book.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you did. I mean, it's awesome, and he talks about everything from his days through today. So everybody needs to take the time, spend a little bit of cash, buy the book, and read it. It's a great book. So
JP, to let everybody know, they think that being an ex-NFL player or an NFL player is this life of glamour and luxury. Right when I get off with you, I'm going to cut my mom's grass. So we'll just leave it at that.
It's so funny because it cracks me up because I talk to so many players, and even from the background that I had, it's a lot of guys just don't believe in all of the hype and I got to be quote unquote Antonio Brown and have a driver with my Bentley and all this shit. It's mainly just being a normal human being. And that's Absolutely. The most everybody that I have met through my years of being around sports, for the most part, almost all of them were just normal guys, especially the guys in the 90s, guys like you, guys like Derek. Now, don't get me wrong. Derek liked his toys. He did. And he had a nightlife for a while, but he did. He seemed to learn from his mistakes, and he was still an everyday guy. I mean, he was just a nice guy. So, but anyway, getting back, look, I really appreciate you coming on, and we definitely have to do this again. But when I get through this book completely, and sadly enough, it's not like a big giant Stephen King novel. I just don't have a lot of time.
Yeah,
and my time is just cut down, and it's especially right now. But the season always kicks my butt. Sure. But I love the book, what I've gotten through it, and I think everybody else will too. So for everybody out there, make sure you go on Tim's website. You get a signed autograph book, and it's a lot of knowledge, a lot of things that you would never ever expect, and maybe it'll teach you something about the game. And you won't. For the guys out there that get so frustrated about Andy maybe not grabbing somebody at the deadline, or a player maybe you don't think he's playing up to his expectations. The one thing I've always said, and Tim, I'm sure you'll probably agree with me, you get to the NFL for a reason. There's not many guys that get into the NFL because they knew somebody or they just fell in. You've got to, somebody had seen something in you to get you in that league. You may be in the wrong system. You may be in the right system. There may be something that just doesn't click with you. Maybe it's a position you're in. Tim switched positions. I mean, but you guys have to give some of these guys a little bit of a break because they're doing something that most people could never do. I would never be able to play Tim's position if I wanted to. So if I begged for it, and I'm not the smallest guy in the world. It's just, I don't think I could ever do it, just simply because you got to be a special individual to play in that position. And you were the green dot of the offense. I mean, no matter how you look at it, you were the guy that ran the show when it came to that, other than the quarterback, and everybody looked up to you. So, I don't know, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure everybody out here listening loved it. But we will have to do this again. Make sure you jump on his website, grab a book. It will teach you guys more than you think it will. And with that being said, man, again, I really appreciate you coming on, and we will definitely have to do this again.
All right. Well, thank you, JP. It's good talking to you guys, and let's go Chiefs.
Let's go. All right. Thank you guys for joining in.